Hi, hello. I'm Dr. Visweswaraiah as Assistant Professor of English, Government First Aid College, Kuningal, which is affiliated to Tumkur University, Karnataka. Dear viewers, here in this video, you're going to get some of the information uh, uh, and some of the interesting object of literary criticism. So my topic is on neoclassical literary criticism. So as soon as I say that neoclassical literature in English literature has its own uh, remarkable achievement in English literature. So, in that particular period, or in the period of neoclassical, the writings on poetry, fiction, and plays, prose have come up. They had come up with a very in the background of Renaissance. Means before neoclassical period, we saw the Renaissance literature. The Renaissance influenced neoclassical period, and also how to look at the particular neoclassical period, and in all the genres we can find criticism. Okay, it was also given importance to that literary criticism. So if one says there is a writing, so immediately immediately criticism rises there, and it leads to influence it. Okay, so in this background, dear viewers, you will be focused on neoclassical literary criticism. Okay, so when I say that neoclassical period began immediately after the restoration. See, along with the restoration, in 1660, the monarchy system was restored by the king Charles II, when he started with the giving importance to literature, art, culture. So, in 1660, when monarchy system was restored, he reopened the theaters, and by that way, the neoclassical period started with the restoration, and after that, it went on to the age of Pope, and means Augustine age, and after that age of sensibility, Johnson. So these were three stages which took in the neoclassical period, made it contribution to literary criticism as well. Okay, dear viewers, let us have some slides on the screen so that we'll be having more on it. Okay, so please. Okay, here on this slide, you just see the topic and the details about my presentation. Okay, Neoclassical Literary Criticism. Okay, let us go to the next slide. Here, in the first slide only, it will be focused about how this literary criticism, neoclassical literary criticism, began. So we immediately, when we say that neoclassical period, we remember that the influence of Renaissance. We just see that influence of Renaissance insisted on going back to classics. So that is how the neoclassics began. Okay, so neoclassicism can be seen as an extension of the Renaissance from the early 17th century to the mid 18th century. So this is very remarkable here. Neoclassical period is just an extension of Renaissance era. Okay, so that is how there Sidney once had argued that to create the ideal world was the function of the poets, something that neoclassicists did not accept. Okay, that was the remarks of Sidney. So to move with the sorry the major focus of neoclassicists was the reaction of or to what was happening there, and also in a recreating or recreation of the classical writers of Rome and Greece. So but they were also not up to the use of classics the way Renaissance writers did. They were against such kind of idealism. There was a kind of little shift there, though we call it as neoclassicism or neoclassics, just an extension of Renaissance, but most of the writers, they were against such kind of idealism where Renaissance completely focused on classics. But here classics were viewed newly. That is how the importance of this. That is how we have to see. Okay, if one says that this neoclassical period has got with or just extended form of Renaissance, but we see that really new in them, not exactly from the Renaissance. Many writers were against to such kind of idealism which Renaissance had. Okay, so to move with okay, another slide. Yeah, please. Okay, neoclassicism as a literary movement. So we call it as neoclassicism is as a literary movement. Okay, we see that objectivity, rationality, impersonality, decorum, balance, harmony, etc. were the words they picked to work with from the classics in their own times. This is very important. In the last slide also you just see, you have seen how neoclassics influenced, or how they got, or they were completely some of the writers were completely against to the idealism of Renaissance. Here we would like to focus on objectivity was more in them, rationality, impersonality, decorum, balance, harmony. They were the words they picked out and to work with from the classics in their own times. That is how translations took place. Okay, the translations of Iliad. That was how we and importantly that they picked out all these elements and concepts for their own ideas. I mean, giving their own touch in it and giving the flavor of their own times. That is how very important. So they were Aristotle of their time who were reacting to Plato's idealism. This is how. Okay. So neoclassics in their approaches to art, while the Renaissance writers believed in creativity and invention, the neoclassicists focused on technique and worked by the rule book, like that. Okay, that is very important to go with. Okay, we see that Alexandrine in France and a heroic couplet in England were the form of poetry that the neoclassics majorly wrote in. So, look at how Alexandrine in France influenced and the heroic couplets in England. This kind of form of poetry neoclassicists were wrote, or they were majorly wrote. And okay, while Renaissance writers pursued a world of infinite human possibility, the neoclassicists moved with the ambit of finitude. So, imitation and nature were two major concepts through which the neoclassical writers approached the production of art. Okay, so to move at the neoclassicism, the imitation has its roots in Aristotle, meant to be suggesting that art which would be imitative in nature will be objective and impersonal. So the Renaissance subjectivity, where art was the product of imagination, not the objective technique, were reacted against. So that is important. See how the subjectivity in Renaissance made it that and the art was of imagination. So the technique of the same reacted against in the neoclassical era. Okay, nature is not understood in romantic sense by them. Okay, so to conclude with, we can just look at how the classics or the classics by imitating them would help modern writers to understand and best express the external world and human nature, made it a literary movement there. And they were not blind followers of classics. Just so, if one says that neoclassics, they just use classics and they write. It's very important. They don't. They were not blindly taken any classics and following them. So they were looking at the important aspects and also giving their own touch to it, and even that is how the new classics have it had come up there. So all of them have different ways of approaching the classics. See, it was vary from person to or writer to the writer. See, we just see that, for example, if one writes about approaching the classics and the other one completely he was differently, accepting them and also putting his views and ideas into to it and bringing out it. So that is how all of them have a different ways of approaching the classics. There is no particular concept. There is no particular rule to look classic as one looks into it. So this is very important. And even the beginning of the 18th century, we saw that the emergence of debates between the moderns and ancients. See, this is also important aspect, that in the Augustan age, probably we see that how in the debate took place between moderns and ancients, because look at the classics or the ancients in the modern eye, or look at the classics in a new way. So that is how the moderns and ancients, how ancients were taken into consideration by the moderns. So this is a very fantastic era in the classical, or it's a moment, we can say literary moment in that particular way. So Jonathan Swift perhaps would have the idea from such debates for his book, The Battle of Books. He brought out the Battle of Books. Even and even in Gulliver Travels, we just you can also see the battle between the learned one and even how political gimmicks or political allegory was clearly brought out to show that the debate between the power people and with the common people. Okay, so in the same way, Gulliver's Travels, voyage to Lilliput, when a poor man, that Lemuel Gulliver, in the Lilliputians kingdom, have the how we survived, and also used his tricks to go. So these were all very important aspects to look at into how this neoclassical period was also led to the new kind of literary criticism. Okay, so this is what you can just have a glance on it. These are the references, and to save it. Okay, dear viewers, that is how a neoclassical period, as I just focused to know about, it led to some of the important elements in the literary field, or we can say that in English literature, remarkable in English literature. So neoclassical is a literary criticism, it's a literary movement, how it was importantly focused in the politics, society, culture, and in all art form, what was there in the uh, England, in British. Okay. So dear viewers, so like this, if you want to more and more to uh, get information, kindly read out and get the information and make notes of it, and especially literature students, uh, get a notes, I mean you make a notes and highlight it and recall the dates and the names of the important writers of particular age, so that it will be able to recall in your exams. Okay, so in this way, thank you so much for listening to me and for your patience listening. Kindly subscribe. Thank you so much.